wherever you are joining us from around the world tonight. Thanks for joining us for another set of six. And tonight we are visiting our friends over there in Scotland. I'm being joined by Michael, or Mikey Short as he's known, and Hannah Crisp, World Cup 2019 representatives and long-time servants of the game of touch football in Scotland. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Beautiful. So I believe it's midday over there or thereabouts. Here in Australia where I am, it's 9 o'clock at night. So hence the welcome for whatever time people are joining us from all around the world. And we look forward to having a great chat with you guys. This set of six series has been an excellent way to stay connected with everyone around the world and just to learn a little bit about some of the people that play this great sport of ours. So, Mikey, I might start with you, mate. Give us a little bit of a rundown on your background in the sport and what it is you do over there in Scotland.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having us. It's wonderful to see you. I've been involved in Scottish touch for 15 years. Got my sort of debut in 2006, played in the European Championships, which were in Scotland, actually. So I guess a 14-year career that sort of peaked just last year at World Cup. I've moved between mixed and men's throughout my career. Started off in mixed, moved into men's, now back at mixed. And been lucky enough to play in 4 World Cups during that time. 2007, Stellenbosch, the hot and dry one, and then 2011 in Edinburgh, the sort of normal weather one. 2015, the wet one, and 2019, the hot one. So it's been a cool career. I came over to Oz as an individual, just as a player myself, in 2009, and got involved with the varsity touch team, the sort of Sydney University group that played in State Cup that year, and that was my first big sort of exposure to Aussie touch. That was an amazing experience, a real revolutionary thing for me, and I took a Scotland team back over again in 2010. So I think I've had 7 visits to Oz to play during my time. And I'm currently, I live in Switzerland now, so I'm actually not in Scotland. I'm taking a couple of years sabbatical from playing to focus on my family and also to sort of do a bit of stuff behind the scenes with Scottish Touch instead, sort of working with the Open teams and the Open coaches. I'll be back playing again when I can.
Yeah, you're a long time retired, mate, so a sabbatical sounds like a great idea. So, Hannah, we might bring you in now and tell us a little bit about the Hannah Crisp story.
Yes, so I started playing touch Christmas 2011. I had just a one-off kind of social game, and it was like, fell in love with it straight away. Had my first season with Mixed Open, Scotland Mixed Open 2012. Was just a train-on for the first year, and went to Euros as the manager, which was a really totally different experience to being a player. But it was really good to see. Kind of opened my eyes to what it was going to be like as a player, and then got my first cap in 2013 with Mixed Open still, and then played World Cup and Euros with Mixed, and then moved over to Women's Open in 2016 after the World Cup, and then have played Women's Open since. Went to World Cup last year, and then decided, a bit like Mikey, that the really good thing for me in terms of touch and just something I'd wanted to do for a while was to go and live abroad. So went to Australia. I lived in Sydney for 5 months. I went out just November, just gone. And the intention was to stay for longer, but COVID hit and ruined all my plans. So the day after I got back from NTLs, I booked a flight and came home.
There you go. So that's Hannah in a nutshell, but I'm sure that 5 months whet the appetite, and we'd love to have you back here in Australia whenever the borders reopen. And
I know.
we might touch on that now. The COVID-19 pandemic around the world has obviously had an effect on every country. There are no countries that are unaffected. How has it affected Scotland in general, and then as an extension, the touch football community? Can somebody let us know what it's like there at the moment? Hannah, I guess you're there living in Scotland. Yeah. What's the situation?
We've had we had a pretty heavy lockdown kind of April, May time, and started to ease off. Things started to open up again. The outdoor stuff, you could meet people in parks and golf and stuff. Touch for us in groups of no more than 15 and limited numbers of household came back last week. So we had our first actual touch training session last week, which was great. And now we're just kind of looking at what's going next. We've had a few local lockdowns brought in. So Aberdeen went back into lockdown a couple of weeks ago. Glasgow have just gone into some form of lockdown again. So we're not quite out the other side yet. Obviously, I don't think anyone is. But we're just kind of looking forward and saying, right, how do we get from here where we're at to being back to be able to train as Scotland teams and club teams and have our leagues again. So it's still very early stages of returning to play, but I guess you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. And what about you, Mikey? You mentioned that you're living over in Switzerland. How's the situation over there?
Yeah, sure. We've had a slightly different journey in Switzerland, a small country. The lockdown pretty quickly and controlled the issue quite early on. We got hit quite early on as well. There was times when Switzerland was actually top 2 or 3 ranked cases because of lots of international travel flowing through us. So we got hit quite hard early on, and everything just completely shut down, including all sport. I work professionally in sport as well at UEFA, the football governing body. So we were the whole of, and there's quite a few sporting governing bodies here in Switzerland. So sport was one of the earliest things to react here anyway. Some other countries it didn't do quite quickly. So that happened real quick. Now we're still actually haven't really returned. It's really mostly on the youth side. There's been a bit of movement, but obviously the touch scene here in Switzerland's a little bit smaller than some of the other countries. Myself, I haven't been involved at all in playing anything yet, and really have been trying to keep things moving behind the scenes as much as possible rather than on the field.
Oh, excellent. So, better times ahead for everybody, I guess, around the world. So, something to keep us on track. Here in Australia, we're back out playing in most areas. We have one particular state that's locked down, but generally speaking, around the country, most people are starting to get their competitions back underway. So it's been a ride, that is for sure. But hopefully, around the world, the touch fraternity are seeing some greener pastures or brighter lights ahead. So we'll touch on what you guys have done as an organisation to keep your players involved, to keep the touch football community engaged and informed during the isolation period. What has Touch Scotland done that's kept you in touch?
Do you want to go, Mikey, or I'll go?
Oh, you go ahead.
So it's been a lot around quite a strong team focus. So yep. I know, like, my club team over here, Galaxy, have done a lot of everyone's favourite Zoom quizzes and Zoom calls and stuff during the early stages of lockdown. And with Women's Open, we've had a couple of, like, I guess you could call them video analysis sessions, but just watching touch and having a conversation about it virtually at the beginning. So it's been a real team focus on the communication throughout lockdown, and there's been a fair few Scottish Touch organised things as well, so quizzes and all that kind of stuff. It's quite limited what you can do, but the as things start to ease, the focus has really gone back onto let's get people back in their clubs, get people out playing again, and play to the government regulations and stuff. But as soon as we're allowed to, let's get people back out and engaged in their clubs and teams physically as well as socially, I suppose. Yeah,
that social aspect is very, very important. That we're finding, and from the conversations that we've had, the feedback that we've had from all of the countries so far has been the need to stay in touch for the mental health aspects of our sport. And the fact that we are such a tight-knit community too, and that team spirit is so important in our game, that the mental health aspects are very important. You'd find that, Michael, from your own?
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably been one of the big opportunities of this adversity, right, is to reassess what's important about most things in your daily life, especially your voluntary things, such as sport and who you spend time with. I think what we've tried to do in Scottish Touch is use it as an opportunity to work out what we what we're good at, what we need to do better, such as, for example, finding ways to integrate the youth and the kids because they've been allowed to return to sport earlier. So it's a great reason at last to say, well, now we have to focus on opportunities there. There's been some great innovation in terms of running some kids camps, in terms of focusing on integrating into youth into clubs and exploring other opportunities into schools and things, because everyone's trying to find ways to get back to normality, and sport is one of them. And Scottish Touch needs to try and get into that sort of habit of being a family-friendly, sort of youth-orientated sport. When it's very easy to focus on elite, it's very easy to focus on the things that are easier, perhaps to organise, the really committed people, the people that are already massively involved. But it's forced us in Scotland to look at those alternatives and really be quite successful in implementing them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that feeds on to the next question. So where is touch predominantly played in Scotland? And, you know, what sort of numbers have you got? And where's the growth market for you guys?
I can probably take you back a few years, or take you back a few years more than Hannah anyway. She's a bit younger and sprightlier than me. So when I started, so 2005 is probably when I can speak back to, because it's been a bit of a journey in terms of who plays and how we play touch in Scotland. It was very much a corporate league, a corporate sport back in the 2000s, early or mid 2000s. Very much work-based teams entering teams into leagues that were social, and as I guess a lot of the sport's been like that in a lot of countries. It was very much work teams. It was very much rugby clubs that were generating something to do in the summer. And that really was where the core came from. It was still a committed core though, because it led to us hosting the 2006 Euros. So it was still like, it wasn't just a social sport on the side. It did pick up some really key, important, committed people who set up Scottish Touch as an organisation around that time. And then the Euros, and that Euros in 2006 was when suddenly we had all these other ideas about hosting more specialised leagues, and maybe having a little elite league, or trying to explore into universities or schools or anything like that. It's taken a long time to sort of change, and now we have a variety of different leagues that are maybe more corporate, a little bit more player-led on the elite side. The clubs, as Hannah mentioned, and Hannah can speak better to this because she's there playing in a club that's excellent at this in terms of finding kids from schools and integrating them into clubs. So now there's a nice variety. The geographical split around Scotland's a little bit, it changes with the times as to where everybody plays. There's been ebbs and flows in terms of popularity in different parts of the country. But I mean, Hannah's playing in it right now, so can probably say a little bit more.
Yeah, fair call. So we'll bring Hannah in there.
Like at the moment, it's you've got kind of, I would call it 4 hubs. So you've got Aberdeen in the north, your Central Belt, and then Glasgow and Edinburgh. So an east-west split there as well. Total player pool is probably only about 2,000 people.
I think that's about right, yeah.
Which, when you compare it to like 800,000, for example, in Australia, or I think England are now like between 20 and 30,000, it's a really small player pool. And for us, our key growth market, I think, which has been discussed quite heavily with the restructure, which I think we'll maybe touch on later, is the key growth market for us is the youth. And a lot of clubs are now, we had a juniors, so took part in junior Euros for the last 5 years now, and discounting this year, obviously, but they've had a youth academy set up that train at weekends, and then clubs are starting to bring in youth setups, which are getting regular training sessions in for kind of school age, primary school, high school, which is great. And I was coaching last night at my club's youth session, and we had nearly 40 kids down training, which is more than our club has in the entire senior grade. So that kind of thing will build such a good future for touch in Scotland if we can keep those numbers, start them when they're young, keep them through to 20s age. The future looks brighter than 2,000 people in the whole of the country.
That's awesome, and to hear that the youth target, obviously here in Australia, the situation, our youth development has been ongoing for quite some time, but the importance of a youth program is demonstrated by the success of countries like Australia and New Zealand, who do contribute so much to that development pathway. That you guys are on the right track, and those numbers that you're talking about, they can only grow.
Yeah.
Are you challenged by seasonal? Do you play it all year round, or is it a seasonal sport? And obviously,
we try.
You try, yeah.
To. But
do you compete against other sports in the
yes,
in the
we
peak
compete
season?
against
Right? I mean,
rugby union, I guess. Rugby unions are and kind of the hockey, and everyone's always drawn by indoor sports when it's -4 on a Tuesday night. The last thing you want to do is go and run around outside. There's always going to be competition, I guess, with other sports.
We also rely upon other sports, right? Because you don't grow up as a 6-year-old playing touch in Scotland, right? Most people getting involved in touch are referred from another sport, or at least have played other sports in their on an institutional basis at school. They're not playing touch, therefore they're playing rugby or hockey or tennis or athletics or whatever. So we rely upon those other sports effectively to feed into touch or to work with us. But then that obviously means that you carry that competition throughout that player's entire career. And obviously we've lost some players. Well, you can phrase it as losing players to other sports. Some might argue we've developed those players into those other sports really well. Like several of our junior touch players have gone on to get professional rugby contracts, and especially some of our girls in the women's game have moved into the women's rugby or women's sevens side of things as well, including Hannah. And that was, that's a great thing. That's competition, but it's also exactly where touch needs to live in our country. It can't. It's never going to live as a standalone thing, completely equally competing with all big sports and people playing it and only playing it for their whole career. It's never really going to happen that way. Yeah. So we sort of need to integrate with them. And netball is another one. There's been a lot of growth in netball. So it's competition, but it's also our source of players at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we've touched on again in some of our earlier conversations. It's about, and you talked about promoting the sport as a family sport and something you can play with in the mixed divisions and so forth. But it's also that complementary aspect about the skills that you develop in touch and that pathway that you talked about, whether it be into professional rugby union in the men's and women's game, or whether it's into those other sports like netball. There are so many complementary aspects of our game that can be taken into those pathways. So, you're right in saying that in some way or shape or form, it is competition, but it's also a pathway. It's a way to attract players that, if you want to play competitive rugby in the future, touch is a great stepping stone.
It's something I don't think Scottish rugby or really appreciates either, is the skills that you build playing touch. And it's something that's really good. You can see it in, for example, the Aussie Sevens, women's sevens team. There's loads of touch players in there. How do you?
They won the gold medal. They won the gold medal on the back of touch players.
Yeah.
And they basically came and pilfered from the sport.
Yeah. And it's something they don't really appreciate yet, and whether they will in the future, who knows? But I think as soon as people realise the skill set that you get from playing touch, in terms of being able to read a game, your handling, it would be so much more beneficial if other sports could see that and appreciate.
And I'm sure that is something that Touch Scotland, need to take out into the marketplace and try and forge relationships with those sports and really push that complementary aspect of our game. It can only lead to growth.
In a COVID world, there'll soon be no tackling in rugby union anyway, right?
So, 100%. Yeah, scrums, no such thing.
We'll just merge into each other at one stage.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, but I think, and so we can touch on there that I guess as an extension of those skill sets, and if you want to be a professional rugby player, sure, come and play touch. But the beauty of touch is that we can hold our own as a sport. We have international events. You can represent Scotland in touch football. You don't have to be a professional rugby player. You can represent Scotland in touch, and you guys have done that on the biggest stage. You've touched on your World Cup history. I guess I want to take you back to last year, 2019 in Malaysia. The hottest World Cup known to the humankind that's ever played touch football. We had everything at that event. Give us a little bit of an insight into how you guys prepared and what you took away from the experience of playing a World Cup in Malaysia.
Who's going? Do you want to go, Mikey?
You can go, Hannah.
Mr. Bronze.
Mr. Bronze.
Well, yeah. So World Cup was obviously a pretty amazing and special thing for me and my team, and hopefully Scottish touch and European touch and world touch in general, in respect of a European team picking up that bronze. So World Cup was a pretty fantastic end, despite it being the most stressful 6 days in history. I guess the thing for me with World Cup is, as I said earlier, having seen 4 of them, like 2019 was quite clearly the one that was the most survival tactics is key, and that wasn't just the temperature either, right? I mean, 6 days is the first time we've ever played a 6-day event in our years. So just the longevity of it, the mental strength required for that was real tough. The distance, the travel, the food and getting used to some of the was pretty critical. But for us, the biggest reason I think we had success in 2019 was not so much what we did on the field, but what we did off the field. It was very much a case of looking after ourselves, having dedicated people, behind the scenes with our teams to focus almost solely on how do you survive this tournament, rather than what's your on-field strategy, what moves are going to work against this team, what defensive policy against this team. We focused really hard on how do we manage ourselves at the hotel, what do we do in respect of transport, what do we do in terms of hydration. We had all these gadgets and gizmos with us, and our boxes of ice and our towels, and our physio had this special app on his phone that we had to stick our finger on every 5 minutes to work out whether our heart rates were acceptable. And I ended up in hospital.
Wow.
For what turned out to be nothing. My coach tells this story. So I ended up in hospital because I got a kick in the ribs, basically, or a knee in the ribs, and my heart rate went all over the place, just panicking in the heat. So I ended up in hospital, and basically there was nothing wrong. There were no breaks or anything. It was just difficulty coping with it when you can't breathe. But the doctor wrote up a note and basically said everything about this patient is unremarkable. And send that back, which was obviously intended to be a good thing, but it's not how my team saw it when I returned.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't meant personally, mate. But yeah, as you said, it was certainly an experience. We've got some comments coming in, some questions which we'll touch on a little bit later. But nice one here from Simon. We shared a hotel with Scotland. Bright red sunburn was the poolside fashion.
I hope that was, and it certainly wouldn't have been Hannah, because I've never seen Hannah burn.
So there you go, Hannah. What about yourself? What about your experience over there in Malaysia, and what did it mean to wear the colours of Scotland on the world stage?
Yeah, I think that for me is the main thing. It's my 3rd sport for Scotland. Well, 2nd of 3 sports for Scotland, and it's something I'm always proud of. Is wearing Scotland kit on whatever stage you're on, whether it's Euros or if you're representing your club, which is a Scottish club, on a European stage, World Cup, whatever the sport, whatever the stage, it's always a massive honour. And I think when you're going through something like a World Cup, the personal strains off the field play into it massively, and you have to work out how to segregate things that are going on in your personal life and things that are going on in the field and with your team. On top of that, the heat and the food and everything else that's going on. It really is, it's such a test of your resilience. And when you come through it, the other end, and you look back on it, you just think that is the most phenomenal thing I've ever done. And you're just so proud of yourself for it and the way you handle things. And our team prep. I mean, in terms of our team, I was really impressed with how our team handled the heat, and that is one thing that a lot of teams talk about. But I think out of the Scotland teams, we're the only team that didn't have anybody sent for medical attention due to the heat, and that was something I'm just really proud of, like my team for managing. And we knew it was going to be difficult to cope with, but we all agreed as a team that this is our base standard. We stay hydrated, we keep heat safe, and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I think we dealt with it on the whole really well, and it was just it's just an amazing experience to be able to say that I've flown all the way to Malaysia to play in a World Cup and represent Scotland is not many people can say that. And I think a lot of the time in the sport we take it for granted, and that's just something that we do, but actually most people don't do that. Most people don't come anywhere near an international jersey so in their lives. So I think it's something we can all be very proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luke Profke has made a comment there. Hannah Crisp, how does it feel to be an overachiever? Wow. Three sports where you've had the international cap. What are the other ones that you are keeping a secret there?
Yeah, so I did athletics as a youth, as a kid, and rugby sevens. So I played for Scotland just the once, but back in 2018.
Okay, just the once.
Just
the once, like everybody does it.
Just one tournament.
Awesome. But I guess just hearing both of you talk about the Scotland Touch Association and their tilt at a World Cup, the professionalism. You've talked about earlier, you're only a small country, 2,000 participants, so a small player base to pick from. But that professionalism that you talked about there, Mikey, bore the fruit, I guess, with that bronze medal.
Yeah, and that links in with what Hannah was saying about balancing all the other things going on. Yeah, Scottish Touch do a lot of things really well. We do some things not so well. We've obviously done something right to be able to get to where we've got to in terms of European touch and this medal, and that owes a lot to a very small number of individuals behind the scenes keeping things ticking over. We did pretty well with World Cup in terms of our prep, I think. But one quick story which we can probably all laugh about now is, and this is where it goes to Hannah's point about people balancing things in their life or outside and then their touch. It only looks professional because there's some other people behind the scenes who are having the world's worst time, and just like a duck with their feet going crazy underwater, because we basically 24 hours before the first match of World Cup, I think we can all laugh about this now, hopefully. 24 hours before our first match of World Cup, still did not have any playing kit. Basically our kit supplier went bust in the lead up to World Cup, and kept on promising that stuff was still going to arrive, and it never did. To the extent where the day before the first match, we were scrambling around in the local stores, finding stuff to potentially print up to meet the minimum criteria for the kit. That's how chaotic it all was. Players didn't really know much about it. It was all kept under wraps. It was all sort of, preparation was key. Keeping everybody calm and prepared was more important. But there was plenty of people in the background doing some incredible stuff to try and hold that together, and literally getting cabs around shops and finding local printers and all this. Now, luckily, another hero came along, basically, who organised a brand new order of this kit and managed to ship it in on a crazy quick turnaround basis from I don't actually know where it came from in the end, to arrive in the middle of the night before the first game. Some other managers of ours stayed up all night organising it all, putting it outside of people's doors to wake up to on the morning of World Cup to put on and play. So that shirt that Hannah was so sort of rightly sort of emotional about, did that crazy journey to allow us to play. So that sort of preparation, that's what's going on. When everything looks really calm and controlled at these tournaments, that sort of stuff is what's happening, and that's the only reason it happens.
Yeah, I know,
and that's, I guess, what happens for a small country that just is only just, managing to do it all compared to having any full-time staff or anything like that.
Yeah. punching well above your weight. And we've had a question come in from Anthony O'Brien. He wants to know how much does it mean for you guys to beat England, and why?
When did you first beat England, Hannah?
Euros 2014 in the final.
In Swansea.
Swansea, yeah.
Yeah, I probably like 5-3 down or 6-3 down or something at half time at that one.
5-3 down at half time, and we won.
Yeah, that wasn't a fun one, was it?
No.
So it's hard to remember, is it, guys?
I remember my first one. My first one in the Euros anyway was 2008 in the mixed as well. In the final, so we've met England in plenty of finals. It's been a good rivalry, and yeah, it obviously means a huge amount. It means a huge amount to win any Euros final. It doesn't mean more against England. You know, the funny thing about England is that because of the size of touch in this area of the world, we all know each other incredibly well, and in all those England teams that we've played in against finals, there's been some of our best friends in there, people who've attended our weddings, people who, in respect of whom people have been best men and attended big birthday parties and stuff. Like, it's a very, very close group. On the field, it gets pretty tough, but that's one of the special things about this in Europe.
I think, generally speaking, that's the beauty of our game. There are, we're all the best of frenemies. We catch up at World Cups, and the camaraderie that's built across the countries, whether it be Euros where you get back together, and same thing on a World Cup stage, or when we have Trans-Tasmans here in Australia against New Zealand. You're right, on the field there is that rivalry, and you go head to head as hard as any two people can go, but then off the field it's all about the stories, the memories that we build, and it is an amazing sport for that. But so post World Cup, you brought away a bronze medal in the mix, some great results in some of the other divisions as well. But you underwent a review. So Scotland Touch has undergone a review. Talk us through some of the findings that come out of that and what changes that you've implemented or are in the process of implementing.
Yeah, sure. I'll keep this one brief. But yeah, it was very much a review of the future rather than a reorganization or a restructure or anything like that. It wasn't an overhaul. It was a case of Scottish Touch trying to work out its place in the world and what our longer term targets were. It's something that we've talked about a lot with Scottish Touch, is our particular journey. If you frame it from a performance point of view, as in getting that bronze medal, that particular journey probably took the individuals involved in it and lots of other individuals who came in and out during that process. It probably took us about 12 years probably to achieve that, and we were hoping to achieve it in 2 or 3. And we learned a lot of hard lessons along that way, that these things take a long time. So that's what he was really focusing on, was moving away from any form of short-termism and looking towards what we need to do long-term. So it was a big process that those on the board and so on led to try and take this out to as many different people, and lots of survey responses, lots of approaching at all the different levels, club and regional and international. And yeah, it comes out with a very long-term sort of review that results in lots of little working groups and things like that. Obviously, COVID then came along and has really put a fairly hard stop to it, or at least a pause. So it's really working out what our purpose is, and rather than sort of suddenly hiring a whole bunch of new people or changing what everybody does. I think the end result is going to be that now needs to be reassessed in light of where we are now as a sport, and we'll clearly focus on participation, reintegration into people's daily lives, and maybe decentralizing it out to as many different little hubs as possible. So it was a really important thing for us to do, but it hasn't revolutionized the sport yet. It needs to do it slowly.
Small steps, and that's important that you address that way, and acknowledge it takes people power, and to spread it out into those smaller hubs, we need, a base of people to take that on. And I think you're going about it the right way. We've had a comment come in from Soul Phoenix. It says, the sport needs to be accepted as a valid option for GCSE PE students. Until then, teachers understandably have no real interest. Had lots of success in primary schools, but then unless they come to a club, they can't continue the pathway until they reach university. So that's a great point from Sol, and thanks very much for participating in the conversation here tonight. Where do you see Scotland Touch's role in doing something like that? How can you promote that pathway?
I think it's really important, and it's something I know England have worked quite hard on the last wee while, and we, as a coaching setup, there's been quite a few people who are really interested in getting it into schools. What I think is the hardest thing at the moment is educating teachers first, because you can't obviously educate kids until you've educated the teacher pool. So we're quite lucky in Edinburgh. We have quite a few teachers that do play touch, and it is something they are taking to their schools. And we had 2 girls in Women's Open last year who were assessed for touch as part of we have hires in Scotland as the exam board. So they got assessed for their higher PE playing touch, and their teacher came down to our training sessions and stood with another player who was also a teacher, and the teacher kind of talked them through what they're doing, the skills, and how that then matches up to the curriculum. So in Scotland, I don't know how that feeds into other areas in Scotland. I assume it would be the same exam board, but it is a possibility. You just have to, I suppose it's on the kids at the moment to take that to their coaches and teachers, where I totally agree with Sol. We'd like to get it the other way around. We should have teachers educating kids and encouraging them to play the sport. I'm not a teacher. I don't know how that happens, but I think it is something as STA, Scottish Touch, we are really interested in doing.
Yeah. It's about, we talked about earlier how we sell the sport, and it's that the complementary skill sets that the kids can get, the other effects of playing a mixed sport, so the diversity that's involved with it as well. And you know, if you look around the world, there's plenty of different aspects to our game. Here in Australia, we've just, at the last NTLs, Hannah, that you were at, you would have seen the touch football specialised. So the players of different abilities that were out there playing their own tournament at a national concept. It's capturing all of that and taking it out there into the marketplace and saying, this is what our sport can bring to your group, whichever it may be.
I think as a sport, it's quite unique in that manner. Like, we have everyone, as we mentioned before, is the family thing. You can start playing it at 5-6 years old and play it all the way till whenever you decide you can't run anymore. And there's no reason we can't then take that into, as you said, different kind of parts of our society, and looking at disability sport and all that kind of stuff as well. It's so versatile in that manner that it's great for that.
Yeah, perfect.
It's amazing as well, like the touches, because it's a festival sport. Like, you learn a huge amount both about the sport and about yourself and about friendships, about coaching, relationships and things like that, because of the nature that touch is a festival of 5 days of intense stuff, and you learn about how to live with each other. You learn about how to, over a period of time, you learn about how to sort of deal with highs and lows really quickly. One match on a Saturday, you go home and you're upset about it, and then you try again on the next Saturday. So there's a huge amount of like mental development and so on that I know that's not necessarily so easy to turn into a curriculum thing, but there's something special about touch in terms of what it can do to develop people as well, right? And I think if that were to enter the element of the educational side, that would be a really important thing for, I don't know, mental well-being and for developing kids into better people. Hopefully be another way to get it into the schools.
Yeah, for sure. And really interesting points you make there about that, the holistic effects of touch football. It is one of those special sports. So in these conversations so far, a lot of the guest countries that we've spoken to have all talked about the importance of exposure to regular touch. And you guys talked about individually coming to places like Australia or New Zealand. What do you think Touch Scotland needs to do moving forward in opening the opportunities for players? It could be inbound tours, it could be outbound tours. What do you think's on the cards there for international or elite touch in Scotland in that respect?
You go
ahead. This kind of actually answers Kant, Ab, Andy's question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think there was the intention pre-COVID, as everything is these days, to have a kind of British and Irish Lions-esque tour. The intention was to head out to South Africa March, April time and do a tour in next year, because it's our kind of gap year. So every 4 years we have World Cup, and every 2 years we have Euros, and then there's always 1 year in the middle that has nothing. So we were going to fill it with an Lions tour, which would be a phenomenal experience for everyone who was to be involved. I think, although, and I know Mikey has a lot of kind of ideas and thoughts on this, but just doing the one-off tours and the one-off games against you kind of Aussies, New Zealand's, one-off players going out and doing seasons out there off their own back isn't going to change the sport and the view of the sport in Scotland and Europe overnight. It's something that is a huge investment, and Mikey did, as he said, 7 or 8 trips to Oz before kind of finally reaching that level, and it would take it's a lot of investment. So it's something we definitely need to start doing. We need to start competing against teams that aren't just other European teams on a regular basis to kind of improve the game and improve our setup. But it's not going to be something you'll see a benefit from overnight. It's a long-term goal, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And Simon's also talked about, what we don't get in the UK is home nation championships. And then he's put it out there. Are you up for it, Scotland?
We did, actually. We used to have, that's where I got my first cap.
Absolutely. And the last official one was in Edinburgh.
Yeah,
it was a great event. We did a lot of home nations, and that was what filled the gap before that Hannah was referencing. And I guess it's important for Europe to stick together on this as well, and to seek growth across the whole of Europe, because that's really what has benefited us is bringing stuff back over from Oz and New Zealand, whether that be individual players going over, whether that be coaches coming over. We've had some amazing individuals come over and commit great time to us. I shouldn't start naming names because then I'll miss people out. But one special example certainly was Daniel Rushworth, who came over and did an incredible amount of work with us. But it took time, and then what it took was him improving us improving our opposition, and then the tournament getting to a level where playing that tournament prepped you for something bigger. That's what it took. The increase of quality across the whole of Europe is what is required for the European Championships to become something that prepares you for World Cup, or prepares you for playing against Japan or Singapore. So I think there was a thought that home nations needed to expand to Europe, and then the permit competition came along, which is I won't go down that hole, but it was another opportunity to try and increase the quality of the game over here. So we've tried a few things out, and as Hannah says, we have to keep trying them out with a long-term view. This one tournament will make us all better, because we play that one tournament, and you guys over in Oz are playing that sort of quality of tournament quite literally every week. And how we achieve it, I don't know.
But it's the combined effects of like what you just said then, the fact that you make your opposition better. Your opposition then, you see those challenges and you all work together, and those strength in numbers and the proximity of your neighbours there in Europe. You guys have got a really good grounding to set that up. And so Dean Russell's just made a comment there, looking forward to when the Scots get back to Australia to come to the world. Your teams come and play in an event like a New South Wales State Cup or a Queensland State Cup. And they see just exactly what the sport of touch football can be like. 26 fields going from 8 o'clock in the morning through to 6 o'clock at night. It's a spectacle. It's a, as you said, it's a festival, Mikey. And to see that that's something that they can achieve, and to take that back to Scotland, the next step is where it's at.
Dean, basically, when I went over to State Cup in 2009 with varsity, Dean, although he didn't say those exact words, he basically said, effectively, "You're too young for this. You're not ready for this yet." And then when he saw me breathing pretty heavily after my England game at 2019 World Cup, he shouted over, "You're getting too old for this, Mikey." So,
yes, Dean's got a habit of that, the sledge. But it's exactly that. It's that the right time to strike, whether it is the one person that comes over, but then they go back and they're full of beans and that's, I've just seen this, and they talk about it. Then other people want to experience it. So it is a sport. You both touched on it. I can see when you were talking about it, just how special the game's been to you guys. And the fact that you're here spreading that message out is, a good indication of just what the sport can be.
It's hopefully a message as well for other people to try and keep doing it as much as possible because, for example, the England men's guys going over there, a couple of individuals from Wales, Gareth's been over there quite a bit, Louis been over there. All that quality coming back into Europe, that's the only thing. We would have never won our bronze, for example, if Euros hadn't got to that standard because of those people and those teams reaching that standard, right? And that's what I guess other parts of the world hopefully can do. Whether that, we've seen what happened to Japan, right? I mean, Japan have turned into these incredible superstars from attending Australia events quite frequently and from getting good coaching over there. The more that can happen, one day somebody will come along and knock you guys off your perch, maybe.
Yeah, and we want to see that. I would love to be at that tournament where Australia gets knocked off or New Zealand get knocked off, and it's happened in some divisions. And to see just what that means to the other countries, and it's almost like everybody else joins together. It's the world versus Australia or New Zealand. And it's a great experience. I love it. That's what keeps me coming back to the sport. So, yeah, it's great insight from you guys, and as players, and I guess taking on different roles now with the administration and understanding just that story, Mikey, that you understand what goes on behind the scenes. It's one thing to wear the strip, but how did that strip get there? That was great insight. Thanks for sharing that story. And Dean's also mentioned there we'd be open to a Lions team or even a Europe team coming to the State Cup. So from the top of the tree, there it is, the offer.
Going to screenshot that for next
Yeah,
time.
you better screenshot that one. And it's been fantastic having you on board, guys. It's been a really interesting chat. Thank you very much for sharing your stories with us. And we wish Touch Scotland and the people of Scotland all the best in this COVID situation. And we look forward to, what's on the horizon for you guys. I want to throw one last question out to you before we sign off. Hannah, tell me, your first game back, your first try, how are you going to score it?
Left to right, long ball to one of our delightful wingers for a diving score in the corner. There you go.
Oh, there you go. The long ball. So you've got those skills. That's what has you playing 3 different national sports. Fantastic. Mikey, what about yourself, mate? Run us through your one. How are you going to get the ball across the stripe?
With my 2-year sabbatical.
A slowie.
Not exactly. Yeah.
Not a quickie.
Using distraction by moving so slowly. And one of my young pups runs through and I fall over, hide in the grass, and then receive a nice low pass just to duck.
So 2 years out, but you're still going to have that ability to dive under the defence, mate. I love it. Awesome. We talk ourselves up. I love it. But so thanks very much, guys. What are you missing about the game? What are you missing about not being out there with your teammates, Hannah?
I think it's the festival thing that Mikey talked about before, is the camaraderie around the field. And it's something, I guess, because of the heat as well, we didn't really feel in Malaysia, is that feeling off the pitch when you just go and duck into the tent of your pals who are in Wales, or the person you met at last World Cup who played for Malaysia or whatever. And that kind of the off-field festival atmosphere. I'm really looking forward to that coming back.
Yeah, awesome. Mikey, same for you, mate. What are you missing?
I don't want to repeat that, so I'll say something else. But yeah, massively that what Hannah said. I guess the other one just being that sort of moment, pre-tap off, you're standing on the pitch and you just make eye contact with everybody. Just the sort of the challenge, the one-on-one sort of challenge you get when you're right in front of somebody else. Halfway or on the 5 meter line, that feeling of just complete sort of competitiveness, that pure competitiveness in that moment. Been so long, I think that you'll really you don't really think about that when you're playing it week in, week out. I think we'll really value it when it returns. So.
Yeah, awesome. Nice insight. Thanks again, Mikey, for sharing that with us. And to you, Hannah, as well. Thanks very much for coming on board. Set of 6. And who knows where we're going to pop up again, but it's been fantastic catching up with our friends from Scotland. So thanks very much, Mikey, and thanks to Hannah.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers, guys. So thanks very much for joining us for another Set of 6. We look forward to bringing you some more stories from around the touch football world. Next week, we'll be back around Thursday night, hopefully. Not sure who we'll be speaking to, but look for our socials, YouTube and Facebook for all of the details. So thanks again for joining us. Bye for now.